For this journal page, I've used the Bells of Ireland Magical Micas. I've mixed this with a little water and spritzed it over the background. I've then embellished with some of the Portfolio water-soluble pastels. I've masked off the outside edges to form a rectangle in the middle, and I've then stamped inside this rectangle with some cherry pie and Stampscapes stamps to create a really nice goddess scene. The images were stamped with a combination of Versafine and Colourbox chalk ink pads, which I think gives a really nice earthy look to the scene. I've just removed the mask and now I have the beginning of my central panel. At this point I'm going to mask off that central stamped panel and do a little overstamping using the acrylic paint dabbers from Adirondack. I'm going to start with Willow and then move on to gold, just randomly stamping over that background that I've created just to give it a little bit more texture. Once that layer's dry, I'm going to mix a little bit of the regular gel golden medium with some liquid acrylic green and gold, and then in one pot I'll mix the Tibetan poppy just by itself with the gel medium, and in the other I'll add a little bit of the lucky Shamrock to the green and gold paint and the gel medium. This way I get a really pretty bright green paint and a gorgeous deep teal paint. I'm going to mix these together really well so that there aren't any lumps in my medium. Now I haven't gone nuts here. I'm actually working on a piece of clear acetate that's sitting on top of the image. I'm then going to use this little art trowel to apply the paints just to the edges of the journal page. I'm also working over the top of a piece of scrap paper which I can then remove so that my pages won't stick together. I begin with the teal paint and just apply a very thin layer around the outsides. As you can see, I'm also making sure that there's a whole lot of texture in here so that it creates something that's really visually interesting when I'm finished. Now, you'll see later there's a reason for creating all of this extra texture. You'll have to wait and find out what that is. Now, I've just dried off the teal layer with a small heat gun, and I'm going to start on the bright green layer. I'm just going to add this over the top of the teal layer, leaving a little bit of area where one colour shows through more than the other, again just so that it creates a little bit more interest. Having just that one colour is a bit flat and boring. Again, just working, you don't have to be particularly quick, this takes a little while to dry. Now once it's sort of semi-set, I'm just going over with my finger and making that background a little bit greener with some leftover bits of that dark green paint that I mixed up, just so that it has the same tone over the entire image. Okay, I'm now finished adding the second layer, and as you can see it's really bright green, and whilst it's lovely and glossy, it's not really stunning. So I'm just going to go and fix that. So I have a wet paper towel here, and just some of the black Adirondack daubers. This is where all that texture really comes in. This is where it's most important. What I'm going to do is apply the black paint directly over the top of the gel medium. Because the gel medium's already sealed the page, it allows me to work with this in a way that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. I can apply the black paint and rub it into areas and then take off as much or as little as I like using a wet baby wipe. Now that I've rubbed the black paint into all of the nooks and crannies, I've just taken a clean baby wipe and I'm just going to take a little bit of that black paint off. At this point you want to make sure you continue working with a clean piece of the baby wipe, otherwise you'll just wipe the black paint from one spot to another. I've decided that I'd like to highlight the edges so that the green really looks sort of jewel-like or glowing, kind of like a lush rainforest, which is the look I'm going for with this background for my image. I'm choosing just to remove the black paint from those raised areas of the gel medium. That's another reason for adding that texture earlier on. So what I have now is this beautiful darkened piece that will really allow my image to pop from the center. When you look at it, you've still got that beautiful translucent quality to the paint that I mixed from the Magical Micas and the gel medium. It's this gorgeous glossy, it looks almost like wet leaves kind of colour that I'm really liking.
This is my finished journal page using the Magical Mica Spritz background as the base layer, followed by the Portfolio watercolor crayons, and finally overlaid with the gel medium mixed with Magical Micas, and then overstamped and embellished. I finished colouring the image with my Prismacolor pencils, and then I've just gone and added some more gold paint embellishment around the edges using that gold Adirondack dabber that I was using before. I've used some of the Judikins MicroGlaze to go over the top of the piece now that it's dry, because living in a humid climate, anything with that acrylic gel medium actually goes quite tacky and will end up sticking to the page next to it, which I don't want. This is the background colour that I've ended up with. You can see it's got several levels of the green, a whole lot of texture, and it's really metallic and shimmery in places. I'm quite happy with the way the image turned out. This is my favourite part down the bottom here. You've got all of that lovely texture from the layers of glaze and acrylic paints. You can see a little bit of the stamping in the background. You've got both the foil and the acrylic paint there from Adirondack. You can see all of that beautiful added texture from the gel medium. And you really can almost see through the gels here to the background. And that's my finished Nature Goddess journal page.